Hi, I'm Peter Capaldi. I play the Doctor, and you're watching EMS Productions.
Hello everyone, welcome along to today's video. This probably isn't the video you're expecting, but this video is kind of a response, I decided to do it after seeing the BAFTA nominations this week, where neither Peter Capaldi nor Jenna Coleman were nominated for anything. The only BBC Doctor Who nomination was Michelle Gomez as Missy for like supporting actress or something, and that really annoyed me. And so I felt that I'd make a video trying to answer the question, is Doctor Who still relevant? Is it still relevant in society today? Mainly in the UK, because obviously that's where I am, and that's where it's easiest to tell. And it's sort of, I don't like doing negative videos. Clearly this is the first proper, well, it's going to be negative, let's be honest. And I don't take this lightly. I don't like making negative videos. I mean, it seems to be almost fashionable on YouTube to make videos saying bad things about Doctor Who. And I feel like you can't be a fan of the current era and be a proper fan or something. It's kind of like this sort of elitist nature of some people, I'm not naming anybody, of some people on YouTube who do Doctor videos, of course, who kind of sort of think, oh, I don't like the current era, oh, I watched all Classic Who, clearly I'm a proper fan, I know what fans want and all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of like, it feels like you can't like current Doctor Who. I love Doctor Who as it is at the moment. I love Doctor Who generally. There's virtually no eras that I don't enjoy. And so I'm making it, yes, it's a negative video today, but I don't feel like, I feel it's an important video. I think it needs to be looked at, and hopefully I can establish the answer to the question, is Doctor Who still relevant today? And really look at some solutions as well, to sort of trying to give it a positive outlook, I guess, because Doctor Who's not in a bad state. It's not in a terrible state. I know it's not as great as it used to be, I guess, from society's point of view, you'd say. But overall, Series 9 was the best series so far as I'm concerned. And I feel like for a lot of YouTube Doctor Who people on YouTube, the fact that I say that makes me suddenly not a proper fan of the show, because you like what's currently on? How is that acceptable? And so they just love to make videos all negative. So I'm doing that today, but I won't do that too much in the future, and I'll try and keep the positive videos coming, but this is an important video. Well, to sort of answer this question, is Doctor Who still relevant, I've kind of narrowed it down to 4 or 5 key areas where things have changed recently in Doctor Who, or in the way Doctor Who's shown, in this, just various things relating to it that can kind of answer this question, and well, it's more and less definitive answers. And I think, well, I might as well start off by mentioning the BAFTAs, and well, the fact that Peter Capaldi has literally not been nominated for anything, no awards whatsoever, whereas David Tennant used to just rack up every award he was nominated for everything and won absolutely everything that's relevant to lead actor in anything pretty much, and he'd just rack them up. And well, clearly it's subjective, yes, of course, you can't not be subjective in this situation, but I think you would say that, being generous, Peter Capaldi was not worse than what David Tennant did in his era, and that Capaldi's getting no awards or anything, no recognition for his performance, whereas David Tennant was being showered in praise. And I think that's where there's potentially a cultural shift away from Doctor Who by the people who do the BAFTAs and stuff. Clearly you'd think it's a proper panel, but maybe I think that possibly Doctor Who has started to move away from the mainstream, popular, take Doctor Who seriously, to a little bit more niche sci-fi, slightly, and sort of almost regaining its old reputation for being, even though it's not, it sort of gains that reputation for being cheap, having terrible music, having dodgy sets, poor acting. And I just feel like that for some people, that maybe they didn't like some of Series 7 or Series 8 or something, and that's put them off, and then they kind of sort of forget what Doctor Who's like now and kind of just default to, oh, it's like it used to be when it was terrible and all cheap and rubbish, and David Tennant was the holy grail of Doctor Who, when in my opinion he wasn't, clearly. And so that's, I feel like, is where there's been a major shift, and clearly with these panels, to some degree it's a popularity contest with what gets chosen, and well, it just sort of feels like they are purposely ignoring, because yes, I said it's subjective, but I think Peter Capaldi's performance was so brilliant in this series. I mean, in the end of Zygon Inversion and in Heaven Sent, he was such an incredible acting performance that he put on in those episodes in particular, and throughout the series. And I feel at least he should have been nominated for that. I mean, I must admit I hadn't really heard of any of the other nominations, but it was just disappointing to see that he's not getting any recognition for Heaven Sent, which was just so incredible. And yet he's not going to get anything for that, other than the fans liking it. But in terms of anything mainstream outside the fans, he's not getting recognition for it. And I know that in a lot of people's opinions, Peter Capaldi is the best actor to play the Doctor, and the strongest actor. Whether he's the best Doctor is obviously completely subjective, but he's considered by the best actor, in my opinion, and I think quite a few other people. Maybe I'm making that up and it's just me. I'd say he's certainly a stronger actor than David Tennant and Matt Smith. Christopher Eccleston was a great actor, of course, and it's a bit more difficult to judge with the classic series, I think, because acting's developed a lot over the years, and it's a very different kind of show in the classic series, so it's kind of harder to compare. But I feel like he's such a great actor, and he's put on that great performance, that he should be getting some recognition for that, but he's just got nothing. And I mean, Jenna did a great job as well, and she's got nothing either. And so that's very disappointing to see, and could suggest that Doctor Who is becoming less relevant, if you like, and less sort of seen around society, just because of, well, because of there's a lot of reasons which I'm going to try and cover in this video. I guess there's many reasons why Doctor Who's less popular now, and obviously, in terms of a statistical fact, is that viewing figures are a lot worse than they were. I mean, the peak of Series 9 was about 4.8 million on the overnights, I think, and 6 in the... Did it even get to 6 in the final figures? I can't remember. I don't think it got very close, if they did at all. And that's pretty weak compared to what we used to have. I mean, peak David Tennant years was... Yes, I'm going to do a lot comparing to David Tennant, because I think that's kind of the peak of Doctor Who in terms of popularity since it came back. And I'd say 2008 is probably your peak year, probably in the history of the show, frankly, when you had 14 episodes of Doctor Who, because a series and a Christmas special, 13 episodes of Torchwood, and 13 episodes of the Sarah Jane Adventures. So you had 40 episodes from the Whoniverse in 2008, which we've never seen anything like that before or since. And, well, we kind of saw that in 1960s, but it was a very different show back then. And so I think that was the absolute peak of the show. Even 2013 50th anniversary, although the viewing figures were great, I still don't think it had that same mainstream popularity that it did in the sort of latter end of David Tennant's era. And so I'm going to be comparing generally to that, because I think that's the peak. And clearly nowadays the viewing figures are lucky to touch 6 million. Back then they were 8, 9, 10 million consistently. And even comparing it to Series 8, I mean, the final figures were, both figures, overnights and finals, were a good 1 to 1.5 million down in Series 9 compared to Series 8. And obviously there's lots of factors like the ever-moving times, various sporting events on, like the rugby and stuff, wasn't it, last year, up against the X Factor and BBC iPlayer and on-demand stuff. But none of that explains 1.5 million people not watching Series 9 compared to Series 8. Or the 3 or 4 million people who were watching it 5 or 6 years, 7 or 8 years ago, who aren't watching it now. And so there has been a significant drop-off in the amount of people watching the show in the last sort of 2-3 years. And it's hard to pinpoint exactly what that is. I think as much as I don't like to say it, really, it's probably Moffat and Capaldi who have put the mainstream audience off, I think. I don't think... I love Deep Breath. Deep Breath's a great episode, a great introduction to the Doctor, but I don't think it was a good introduction to the Doctor for the mainstream audience, because he was all serious, mean, a bit grumpy, a bit horrible in that episode, and it took a few episodes before we really mellowed out at all, and at that point people were probably just giving up on the show a bit and thinking, I don't like this new Doctor, why should I watch? Because that's where your hook is for a new... You can gain so many viewers if you get a new Doctor that's universally popular, if you like, which David Tennant obviously was, and I'd say Matt Smith was to a fair degree, not quite the same degree, but a fair amount. And that's where you can really gain the views, and I think that just the audience didn't take Peter Capaldi to heart, really, and that makes a big difference to what the viewing figures are going to be, because once, for a lot of people, once they've got set in their mind, I don't like this Doctor, they're not going to watch. And so that's very difficult, and that's probably why there was such a big drop from Series 8 to 9, because Series 8, I think, wasn't that good. I'm sure maybe it's just... I know quite a few people, maybe you disagree, but personally I don't think Series 8 was that good. I don't think it just... Some of the writing was fairly poor, and some of the stories were just a bit weak. And it didn't help not having two-parters and cliffhangers and this kind of hooks and stuff, and the finale wasn't... Death in Heaven wasn't very good. Dark Water was quite good. There's sort of 2 or 3 good episodes. You got Listen, you got Flatline, you got Mummy on the Orient Express. Dark Water's fairly good, but other than that, they were all just sort of filler episodes, forgettable episodes, if you like. And I think that maybe having that sort of a series, and then having a 9-month gap where you're going to forget about Doctor Who, just sort of put people off and meant people didn't come back. Then at the start of the series to promote, well, this is one of the other big problems, which I feel like they did a terrible job, was promotion for Series 9. I've mentioned it before, but the promotion was so poor on this series. I mean, we had the 2 trailers, which were great trailers, but not to the mainstream audience. I mean, it doesn't exactly excite the audience when you put the quote in, just the Doctor and Clara Oswald in the TARDIS. It's just like saying, oh, it's just same old, don't they? It's just like, oh, well, it's just the same all over again. It's back to just another series of what we had last year, and I didn't like what it was like last year, so I'm not going to watch this year. There's nothing to... Clearly it was a difficult series to sell, because there was no hook. There was no new Doctor, there's no new companion, there's nothing really new. There was nothing to hook people in, whereas almost every other series, well, every RTD series, Series 5 had new Doctor, new companion, Series 6 had Rory becoming a full companion, and a lot more River, which was fairly easy to sell. Clearly Series 7A wasn't quite so had the departure of Amy and Rory to sell. 7B had Clara coming in to sell. Series 8 had a new Doctor, and then Series 9 you got nothing. You don't announce the companion departure until the day before the series starts, so you can't include that in any of the promotion. Or watch for it's Clara Oswald's final season, Jenna Coleman's final season, watch it for the big finale when she leaves. You can't build that up because you announce it one day before the series starts. You either don't do it at all or you do it early, I think, to make it work, so you can use it for promotional methods. And so they had nothing to promote. The trailers were good for us fans, but not for the casual audience. And you didn't have any you had hardly any interviews other than the Comic-Con ones with any of the cast. I mean, every series you get the Doctor and the companion usually on the One Show or various BBC News, various chat shows in the UK. Get him going all doing the rounds, and there was none of that before Series 9, nothing at all. And so I feel like people just weren't really aware it was on, and I could see that on Twitter from a lot of sort of people who are casual fans generally were like, oh, Doctor Who's on tonight, I hadn't realised. What? I didn't even know it was on, I missed it yesterday, I didn't know it was on. And it was just kind of felt like there wasn't enough build-up to the series. Series 8, yes, I'd say it was easy to sell, but you had the 5-day countdown with a new teaser trailer for each of the last 5 days before the series was aired. You track the trailer for Series 8 in the middle of the World Cup final. I mean, you're not going to get higher viewing figures than the World Cup final, pretty much. So when you chuck a trailer there, you're going to get people watching it. So they should have chucked it in the Wimbledon final or something. That's mid-July, and that's a big sporting event where you can chuck it in after the second set. I'm a big tennis fan, so I know about this stuff. And if they chucked it in there, then you're going to get an 8 or 9 million people watching it on the TV, rather than a couple of million people watching it on YouTube and sharing it around Twitter. And so that would have worked so much better really, I think, and they just didn't promote it very well, and so people weren't aware of the show. And once you miss the first episode, because it's a cliffhanger episode, unless you've actively go and seek it out on iPlayer, you're not going to watch the second episode if you didn't know what happened in the first one. You need to have seen the first one. And that's where the two-parters is obviously a disadvantage, because you need to see both episodes to have any real enjoyment from it. You can't just sort of watch one. And so that's where it's difficult. And so I think that probably didn't help to pull viewers in. And with the rugby and stuff to distract people as well at the start of the series, you just didn't bring in the viewers at the start, and then it was very difficult to bring them in mid-series. I mean, there was a rise when Maisie Williams' Girl Who Died was out. That was like the top-rated episode of the series, I think, with Maisie Williams, because it's Maisie Williams, it's amazing, and this kind of stuff. And even the finales that usually get a massive boost were still not touching 5 million on the overnight figures, which is nothing compared to what we used to have, which was sort of 7 odd million on the overnights, maybe even 8. And so it was a significant decline, which is really disappointing to see. Obviously, and as I've said, there's lots of reasons for it, and it didn't help that this show was starting at like 8:30 and finishing at 9:30, and this kind of thing. Doctor Who's meant to be 7 o'clock, 6:30. Oh, well, obviously historically it was 5:15, but I'd say New Who's sort of optimal time is sometime around 7 o'clock. It's got to be done by 8 o'clock, would I say, to hit nail the viewing figures. But the problem was Strictly Come Dancing, everybody's favourite dancing show, making Doctor Who, having to be shafting Doctor Who back to about 8:30 or 9 o'clock, and it's just not. You're not going to get 7 or 6-year-olds watching a show that finishes at 9:30. That's just not going to happen. And so it's very difficult to bring the young viewers in, which is what you want the most, to bring them in if you're starting the show so late. So hopefully with the move to the spring, when there's not a load of other BBC shows on a Saturday night to show, that they'll actually put the show on at prime time, 7 o'clock on a Saturday night, not up against a load of competition, and get people watching by doing some proper promotion. Have a big trailer at the end of the Christmas special. Make sure they put a proper trailer for series 10 in, big exciting trailer, and chuck them in as often as possible. You really got to show, because I every week through series 9, I try and stick BBC One on in between programmes, sort of like between 6 and 8 o'clock. I just sort of whack the TV on whenever I could when a programme was finishing. And that's the time when you want to chuck a Doctor Who trailer in for the next week's episode. And I hardly ever saw one. It's only about 3 times throughout the whole series I actually saw trailers for the upcoming episodes, because they just weren't showing them. There just wasn't the promotion or the trailer or anything going, and it was just really like they weren't putting enough effort into the show. I think they just sort of taking it for granted, I saw someone say, which I think was a very good way of putting it. The BBC are taking Doctor Who for granted now, which just isn't right. You can't. That's not going to make the show work, is it? Are they just happy with having 4 million viewers? Because if they are, and they'll keep it going on that, then I don't really care, as long as the show keeps going. But if these low viewing figures are going to cause the show to potentially have a hiatus at some point, well, you could kind of call 2016 a hiatus for Lockvale. Obviously, so many reasons for that, and so clearly the viewing figures do need to get back up, and well, they need to do some proper promotion is the key thing, because, well, although I have the motto of you can't sell a crap product, you can't promote a crap product, but if the product's good, then it should sell itself. But clearly you do need to do a lot of promotion as well, and so the promotion is very important, and hopefully they'll sort that out for Series 10. I mean, you'll have a nice big run up to the series after Christmas. You'll have 3 to 4 odd months where you can really bang out the teaser trailers and build up the hype for the series, because you can use the Christmas specials as a hook. They can use the Christmas specials as a hook, and then build up the hype, maybe with some little prequels or minisodes kind of thing, and lots of little teaser trailers and little articles and stuff, just to build up the hype and the excitement ahead of Series 10, which clearly is so much of an easier series to sell. I mean, it's Stephen Moffat's big finale, it's New Companion. It's such an easy series to sell. I mean, if Peter Capaldi it'd be so painful, but if he is regenerating at the end of that series, then arguably it would be the easiest series they've ever had to sell and promote. New Companion, Doctor going, showrunner, final series, going to be big series. I mean, you're going to struggle to have any other way anymore to be able to sell with that. So I think that, obviously, I really hope Peter doesn't go, and we'll have to wait and see on that. But certainly there's a lot of opportunities to sell the next series, and hopefully they'll do the right job with that. And well, one of the other big factors, obviously, as I mentioned, is Peter Capaldi, and does he need to go? As much as it pains me to say it, because he's my favourite Doctor, he's been so incredible. For the good of the show, do we need another David Tennant-like Doctor? Fairly young, attractive male to bring in all the fangirls again, who presumably all left after David, or maybe after Matt. Also, always an old Doctor, I can't watch that. And so we might have to go down that route to bring in the viewers again. Clearly, or do some sort of celebrity casting, bring in a big name actor who's young. I'm not an expert on actors generally, so I won't say any names, but clearly maybe that's a route they need to take, particularly with the Chris Chibnall reboot in 2018. Whether it would be for the good of the show for, sadly, Capaldi to go, and maybe to have a Series 5 style reboot. Obviously, I've talked about this before in the Series 10 and beyond video, but it's an interesting one, whether they'll actually look to, whether it's for the good of the show, Peter's got to go, because clearly he just isn't that popular in the mainstream. I think he's probably arguably the most popular within the hardcore fan base. The proper, guess I'm saying, I'm going to say it, the proper fans who are not just there for the one actor David Tennant or the one actor Matt Smith. They're there for the proper show, the whole thing. They'll watch every episode. I think that generally he's probably the most popular of the New Who. Maybe up there, but maybe Chris is close as well. But I think that he's probably right up there. And so that's great for us sort of fans that we've got a great Doctor. But whether it's not really working for the casual audience, and so maybe that change has got to be made. It's sad to say it, but that change has got to be made. Well, it does help that Moffat's going, because clearly Moffat has taken Doctor Who out of RTD's mainstream popularity into slightly niche sci-fi, as I mentioned earlier. And I think that's a fair comment, that as great as Moffat's writing is, I love it, I prefer it to RTD's. It's not a sort of show that is going to appeal to the mainstream large audience that RTD's was. Russell's was probably simpler, and was maybe more comedic, and was just sort of easier to get into, enjoy, I think. I still think Moffat's far superior as an era, but I do think that there's a fair argument that certainly Russell knew how to write stories that appeal to a larger audience more than what Moffat's done. So it's a good thing that it's probably a good thing that Moffat's going now. It's his time. I've said it before, and I love his writing in the show. He's done so many great episodes, and well, he's got one more series to show us how it's done, and then we've got Chris coming in, who I think has the potential to bring it back into the mainstream with his writing, because I personally think he'll write it more like Russell than Stephen, and so hopefully that'll appeal more to the mainstream. But it just depends whether he needs his own new Doctor to be able to get that mainstream popularity back. But I would say that these next couple of years, or let's say next 3 years, Series 10 in 2017, Series 11 in 2018, and presumably a Series 12 in 2019, are probably make or break for New Who, in my opinion. Maybe I'm going a bit over the top, but I would say it's probably make or break. Because, well, yeah, Moffat's last series is fairly irrelevant now, because Chris Chibnall's coming in. I mean, the viewing figures could be terrible, the show could be terrible in Series 10, but you've got that new avenue and something new to promote with a new showrunner and a new style of show. And so that's clearly going to work and easy to promote and sort of keeps the show safe to there. But it really depends whether Chris Chibnall's era is a success or not. I mean, it very much is make or break whether his series is a success, because if we get to 2019, the end of Series 12, Chibnall's second series, viewing figures are dwindling down to the worst they've ever been, much worse than they are now. The show's getting shunted around, it's losing all its popularity, then they'll start doing last-ditch attempts like a female Doctor or celebrity casting, this kind of stuff. And before you know it, we could end up in another wilderness years hiatus, who knows? So I do think, maybe I'm going a bit over-dramatic, but I do think it's very important that the Chibnall era is a success and brings back the viewers that have maybe been lost in the Moffat era. Otherwise, in 5 years' time, we might not have Doctor Who on our screens anymore. Sad to say it. because, well, not many shows have this sort of longevity that realistically it's a 10 years for Doctor Who. You've got to ignore the classic series really in this sort of argument that generally series don't last 15 years, they'll last 5 or 6 at best, and then that'll probably be it. And so Doctor Who's already doing really well. It just depends how much further it goes, and clearly they need to put more into their shows, better promotion, maybe changing up the lead actors, and well, we'll just have to see how it goes really. And I mean, looking back at my initial question of is Doctor Who still relevant, I think that when I went to the HMV signing to meet Peter Capaldi, that was a fairly telling, the event itself was fairly telling with the lack of people there. I mean, there were 200, I will admit it was very poorly promoted, again, like everything in Doctor Who. This wasn't even done by BBC, it was done by HMV obviously, but it was very poorly promoted. But there were 200 spaces, and it was like 10 days before there were 200 spaces, and everybody thought, oh, they'll be sold out in 2 days. I thought they'll be sold out in 2 days, and yet they never even sold out. There were still like 50 odd, 60 odd spots left on the day that it happened, and that was really sort of like just clearly, if you didn't have to go in the store, because to do it you had to go in the store, pre-order the DVD before the day, and then you have to come back on the day and sort of then actually get it signed. So you have to make 2 trips over to HMV Oxford Street, and so that didn't help. But I do think if that was a David Tennant series, there'd be people queuing up for days to get it. Then not days, okay, they'd be queuing up for so much more. It'd be sold out within a day. So many queues for it, such long queues. People trying to just hope they'd get in or see David or something, and we just don't have that now because, as I've said, Peter Capaldi just isn't that mainstream popular. So there were a lot of proper fans there. I think I might have some pictures up on screen which give you some idea of how many people were actually there, which looks like a lot in that room probably to you, but honestly there was only about 3 rows behind me from where I'm standing. There's only about 3 rows of people in there, and so it really wasn't that big an event really, and so it was a little bit disappointing, and clearly shows that maybe Doctor Who isn't that relevant in the UK anymore, and it's just not that popular. And clearly this year might not help. They'll need to do some proper promotion at the end of the year and the start of next year, because people are just going to forget about Doctor Who when there is literally nothing for a whole year. Nothing at all for Doctor Who related for a whole year in terms of on TV episodes. Nothing at all. People are just going to forget if you just sort of tune in when it's on, you're just going to forget about it. And so if they don't go full on with the promotion and remind you the series is coming back, then people are just not going to be aware of it. So I do hope that they really do that. And well, the other key sort of, it's bounded around a lot, is Doctor Who must-watch TV? Is it something that you've got to watch, everybody watches, and everybody talks about it? Which is what we had in the Russells era and then David Tennant era. You had that every week. I remember back in 2006, I think it must have been Series 2, Series sort of 2006, 2007, Series 2, Series 3. Although it's obviously fairly vague memories because I would have been only 8 or 9 years old at the time. But I do sort of distinctly remember both lots of adults and kids and adults, everyone around me was always talking about Doctor Who every week. They were all talking about what happened in the last episode, oh, you're looking forward to this week's episode, and what's going to happen to Rose, how's she going to leave, and this kind of stuff. And they were just sort of so much talking about the show, and it was just very much, you've got to watch it this week, don't miss it, you're going to want to see this. And we just don't have that anymore. It's not sort of water cooler talk, if you like. You don't chat about it. I mean, I literally know no one. There's only one person I know who has any interest in Doctor Who, and it frustrates me often that I have no one to talk to Doctor Who about, which is kind of why I started doing videos, because there's just no one else I know to talk about it. And I never hear anybody else talking about it either. I'm college at the moment, it's got like 2,000 people. No one talks about it. Literally, I've heard all of 2 people at the college talking about it out of 2,000. Obviously, I don't know all the 2,000, but you hear conversations and stuff, and no one talks about it. And it's just sort of it's a sad state of affairs, really, that Doctor Who just isn't talked about. And it feels like, because I was such a young fan, if you like, at the time, I kind of missed the boat of the biggest popularity, being a proper fan when it was at its most popular, if you like. Because when you're a 10-year-old, of course you're a fan, but you don't go on all the forums, do lots of discussions about it online and really look into it. And so it sort of disappoints me that I missed that, and I might never see that sort of popularity again. And it also pains me that my interest waned in the 50th anniversary year, and so I wasn't actively interested in the show, particularly in 2013, up to the anniversary special, which really brought me back into Doctor Who. But up to that, so then I wasn't really, I missed all the celebrations, really, mostly of 2013, which still pains me to this day, because there were so many great events that I sort of look back retrospectively, but it's not the same, is it? When you look back at, sort of see these sort of interviews and panels and exciting little videos that were complete shocks, like the old Night of the Doctor. That would have been amazing at the time, but I missed that, and so that sort of disappoints me. But it's kind of irrelevant to this video, I guess. Just an insight into my life, and how Doctor Who it's just not the same. I mean, that's just Stolen Earth cliffhanger. There's the peak of must-watch TV. I think that is the absolute peak of, you've got to watch it next week to find out what happens, because the Doctor's regenerating. What's going to happen next week? Yes, it was a terrible resolution. I've said it so many times, but that's that moment everybody was talking about it that week. It literally was, everybody was talking about it, and so that's kind of what you want to get back to. But it's very hard to get back to that sort of style of people really talking about the show, and I think that it's going to be an interesting few years. These next, well, we have 2 series 100% guaranteed, so that's a positive. But past Series 11, Chibnall's first year, I can't imagine they'll dump him after 1 year, so I'm sure it'll get a Series 12. But after that Series 12, 3 series, who knows where the show will be, frankly. Maybe it'll be in the greatest health it's ever been, getting 10 million viewers with the most popular Doctor-companion partnership ever, great episodes and everything. Or it could all go pear-shaped, we just don't really know. And I think that at the moment, this year is probably the worst year to be a Doctor Who fan since 2002, before it was announced. When was it? The end of 2003 they confirmed Doctor Who was coming back, or was it 2004? At the start of 2004, I can't remember. I was too young, obviously, but it was would have been either 2002 or 2003 where you've had years of no Doctor Who with no prospect of it coming back. That would have been, and so this year is probably the worst year we've had for that since then. Yes, we know it's coming back, but there's just nothing this year. Nothing at all. There's a series of Class, but Class, who gives a toss about Class, really? I'll watch it, but I'm not optimistic, and it's just disappointing. So, yeah, is Doctor Who still relevant? Not particularly, frankly. It's a sad state of affairs, and maybe it'll change in the future, but until we have the next big change, which may come with the companion, but I don't think so. I think it'll be Series 11 is when we'll get a big shift. Maybe the move to spring will help it. It's hard to say until we actually have the series. Who knows? But yes, it's a bit sad, really, that Doctor Who's going like that a little bit. Whereas from 2005 to 2005 to 10, it was clearly sort of that. Then sort of Series 5, 6, sort of 7 were a slight down. Series 8 was a little down, and the Series 9 went... And that's just the way Doctor Who's going, sadly. I'm sorry to leave it on such a depressing note, but we've got to be realistic and just hope that they get it together and that we have lots of years of Doctor Who to come, but who really knows currently? Who knows? Got a lot of reference. So there you go. Hopefully that's answered the question, is Doctor Who still relevant? Not particularly. And it's a worry. So that's pretty much all for this video. I apologise for being so negative about the show, but I was frustrated by the BAFTA announcement, and it motivated me to make this video, which you wouldn't have been expecting, but I feel that it was necessary to sort of let my feelings out about the frustrations of the way the show's going with the mainstream audience, the magical mainstream audience. And So yeah, that's pretty much all there's to say. I will come back with a more positive video next week with a review of Under the Lake, which, well, that's actually such a great episode, and I remember I've already recorded the review actually, and I was really raving about that. It's actually such a great episode, so there is a lot of positive thoughts on that, and so I hope that you enjoy that when we get back into that next week. And I'm also possibly doing next week a few people asked me about it, and I might do either next week or the week after a tutorial on how to get the Doctor Who unreleased music and unscored audios. Because people have asked me how do you do it, how do I get it ripped off the DVDs or off the internet, how do I get it like this so you can actually hear it in this unreleased form with the fairly clean. And it's such a long and complicated process, I can't explain it in text form, so I'm thinking I might do a video to try and give you a kind of tutorial on how to do it, because people want to know, and hopefully I can kind of explain it to you. Well, we'll have to wait and see, but so that will be coming at some point, hopefully next week or the week after. It won't be on a Saturday, it might be on a Wednesday, possibly Monday, Wednesday, somewhere during the week, I'm not sure yet. We'll have to wait and see. But there you go, that's pretty much all there is to say on Doctor Who's relevance to society in the UK now. It's not great, but I'll be back with some positive stuff next week. Like this video if you're not too disheartened and disappointed. Do let me know your comments on Doctor Who in general at the moment, and if you agree that it's not so relevant anymore and that it's not in the greatest health that it was even 2 years ago, the 50th anniversary. What do you think about the show? Maybe you think it's fine, maybe you think, well, obviously the quality of the show, at least in my opinion, is fine, but maybe you think that the show is still in good health and that it's all pretty positive. Or maybe you agree with me. Let you know, I'd love to have a discussion with people. I always want to interact, have a little discussion about how you think Doctor Who's going. So let me know that. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Fantastic to hit 900 subscribers just last week, I think it was. So pleased about that. Great to see my channel growing a little bit and targeting those 1,000 subs now. And there'll be a few special treats if and when I get to 1,000, hopefully somewhere soon. So thank you for all your support on all my videos. Always appreciate every comment, every like, even every view is always great to see. So thank you for all that. I've been Elliot, I'm EMS Productions, and I will see you next week for a more positive Doctor Who review. Goodbye.